Let me take this opportunity as I take the floor, representing, first of all, the region and also Kenya, to, first of all, thank our Egyptian hosts for very warm welcome and very personalized assistance that we've received. And we also send greetings of President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya to President El-Sisi of Egypt. I will talk about the national efforts of the region, but more specifically I will draw on the experience of Kenya. The efforts have been a struggle, and it's been a struggle in two levels. The first level is the fact that a lot of the, first of all, in the talking about the corruption itself has taken us a long time before countries started talking about the corruption in East Africa and elsewhere in Africa. And you can see by the testimony that today is the first anti-corruption, African anti-corruption forum. So that shows you that over the years, the issues of handling the anti-corruption in Africa was something which people didn't talk about openly. And that means that we found ourselves, first of all, in denial, but also we found ourselves with legacy legal structures which could not handle the corruption the way we needed to handle it in the years which have then passed. So what we have in the region, and I believe it is what we have in Kenya, but I think it goes to the region and it goes to all African countries, is that we still are in a struggle of trying to harmonize the legacy legal systems, with the clamor for serious transparency and the fight against corruption. Now, in Kenya, this has manifested itself over the years. First of all, when we started in talking about the anti-corruption many years back, we had several acts. We started with the Prevention of Corruption Act, which first of all made this seeming fight to be rooted in the criminal investigative units. We then realized that we now need to amend that act to now have what we call Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority, which was created in 1997. By 2000, in other words, just barely 3 years, the Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority was disbanded after High Court ruling that its existence undermined the powers conferred on both the Attorney General and the Commissioner of Police by the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya. This is where I say that we had legacy system, but we are now trying to impose the fight against corruption. And that has been a struggle which I think the Eastern African countries have been, and up to now, I believe, still going through. Now, when we disbanded that Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority, we then created Anti-Corruption Police Unit, which was created by an executive order in 2001 to perform the functions of the defunct Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority. In 2003, barely 2003, 3 years again, we then looked at, oh no, we need the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, which was enacted now to establish another anti-corruption institution, which was then called the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission, to fight the corruption. Now, that culminated, I think, in Kenya, there was a clamor for the Constitution in 2010, and this Constitution, as it was promulgated, charted the new way. This new way was trying to recognize that we need to harmonize our fight against corruption and broaden it. So the law gave the parliament powers to enact and establish an independent anti-corruption commission. Therefore, this led to an establishment of what we have today, the Independent Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, which we call AACF. And I'm glad to hear that the commissioner here is with us, Madam Rose Macharia, and as well as the deputy CEO of this unit is here, of the commission. I think Mr. Michael Mubeya is here. And the fight here is that we now had to extend the fight not only to corruption, but recognize what the Constitution also felt we needed to address, which is ethics and integrity. And therefore, you can understand why Kenya now has what you call ethics and anti-corruption commission to fight corruption, economic crime, and unethical conduct in Kenya. From this historical journey and the journey of Kenya, you can imagine what our Eastern African region also have been fighting for or facing as a matter of efforts. So this fight is continuing. Now, we can say that the tenacity of Kenya is now being seen across the East African region in this fight, because we are now widening the fight not just on the corruption in a very narrow sense, but also bringing matters which surround corruption. These are the matters of ethics. We are now current efforts, and this current effort is realizing that though we now have gone well, we have the legal instruments, and in a way we have now got the institutions in place, there is still friction in trying to coordinate efforts. So currently the effort is mainly been to make sure that these institutions work in a harmonious way, because to address the historical and the legacy problems of, in our case, we have the Attorney General, the Director of Criminal Investigation, and the Constitution set now aside the office as an independent office, the office of Director of Public Prosecution, as well as other independent commissions and the office of the Auditor General, the Attorney General, and others. So we in Kenya have now looked at that effort in what we call a multi-agency team, because these institutions were operating in silos, and now we require them to operate in a seamless manner, and therefore we have the multi-agency team, which is now addressing issues beyond corruption and as well as ethics and integrity. And this multidisciplinary team comprises the Attorney General, Director of Criminal Investigation, the AACF, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption, the Director of Public Prosecution, the Auditor General, and others. Now, that is to say that much as we have various institutions, this institution alone working in silos still creates a problem. We still maybe are not handling the corruption in a coordinated way. So the efforts out of the formation of this multi-agency team, the war against corruption in Kenya has been intensified. The President is personally committed to the fight against corruption and assured anybody involved in this in corruption will face the law regardless of stature. And recently the President made a very bold move to demonetarize our currency beginning 1st of June, and requires that the higher denomination notes of our currency will be changed, has been effectively changed today, but must be mopped out by 31st October. So we have the political will, we have the President very much personally driving that. And as a result, a number of now cases of high-profile personalities are going through the courts. And so we can say the war against corruption, as in Kenya, I think if you look across in Uganda, you look across in Tanzania, I think we can liken to that. Maybe the degree may be varying, but the fight against corruption is alive in the region. Now, let me just touch on the challenges. Much as we are on the journey, the challenges are there. Though there is the presidential will, the question is there also the political will? Because also so often you find that when the high-profile personalities are brought to court, there is a cry of politics, the cry that the region or a section or a part of the country is being targeted unfairly. And that means that the institutions are also being attacked, because the institutions sometimes are seen to be aligned or be working for particular political forces. That's a challenge which we are seeing now. So the will is not only for one person. The will must be a will which perforates through the system. There is also continued attack still and clawback on the institutions, the institutional arrangements, which we thought were very independent. And this, you actually can see it even the clawbacks going through the legislative arms of the government. And that's a dangerous process, and something which we have to see as a major challenge to the very good institutions which we have set. I also would like to bring about some issues of other accountability mechanisms like the Auditor Generals, where you find that the legal acts which operationalize these offices, which are supposed to be independent, is actually being undermined by creation or changes of the Public Audit Act or acts, the legal instrument, to render that independence, which is so critical, to be actually interfered with. And you find the cases like where you have the Constitution saying you will have an independent Auditor General, but then you find either through the executive that they are trying to create other advisory boards, advisory things to basically micromanage in a way that the auditor's independence. And that's really micromanaging. And it is an issue which maybe my colleague in Ghana may give us an experience in that. Now, the fight is, in conclusion, I think the Kenyans' effort is mimicked right through the region, and that in the region, I think we are responding to corruption in a manner that is in compliance with the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC, and the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption. And the fight against corruption requires concerted effort and with strong institutions. Finally, as using the computer jargon of hardware and software, what we have done so far, we have actually made the hardware, which are the legal instruments, and also created the institutions, but we need to work more on the softwares. The softwares, the political will, the expertise under these institutions, how these people are appointed, and that we stop undermining those institutions. So with that, I think these are problems which are still with us in the region. And Madam Moderator, let me stop there. Thank you very much.